Good morning. Welcome to Thinking is Contagious. We continue to await the outcome of this election. And as I stated in the prior program, I want to see what the evidence is before I comment. I am leaning towards the fact that what I have seen so far is not the evidence that I would want to see to create this situation. But I don't have all the facts. So I've got to hold off, I've got to wait, and I've got to analyze. I'll tell you what does worry me a little bit. And you know how I've been on this program. I call it the way I think, the way I see it. And again, it's opinion. It's based on research. But I listen to we're going to get Hillary locked up, and nothing happens. I listen to we have the Bidens in this corruption scandal, and nothing happens. I heard Obama say he was going to go after all these corporate CEOs who caused the 2008 financial crisis. No one was prosecuted. I think he prosecuted Martha Stewart for insider trading. No one was prosecuted. I think it's a cesspool of a system. And I think it protects itself, and I think it prevents exposure of this because everyone knows where the bodies are buried. And there's no bigger swamp creature than Nancy Pelosi. There's no bigger swamp creature than McConnell. There's no bigger swamp creature than the likes of Joe Biden. There's no bigger swamp creature than the likes of the Bushes. These people have proven historically that they are involved in politics, and politics, in order to be involved at a high level, requires that people protect each other, protect the system, because it's where they all feed from. It's the feeding trough of those who have live off the government, who live off the taxpayer, because the government creates no money. Anyway, having said this, I want you to also be very aware, those who voted for the left, of AOC's comments about the Trump sycophants. She basically wants a list of those people who are Trump supporters. That's very similar. That's not very similar. That's exactly how communist countries work. There's lists kept of the opposition, and the opposition is dealt with. So that shows you who you're dealing with and what you're dealing with. And that leads me to a comment. And again, I've had a couple of comments, but one of the comments that I've gotten on my program was about the left and about the corruption and the behavior of the Trump campaign. I will tell you this, and this I know for a fact because we've lived it. My family has lived this, okay? Coming from a country that was the second most prosperous country in the Western Hemisphere. In case you don't know what Cuba was in the 50s and and up to 1960, not early 60s, but in the 40s and the 50s, Cuba was a prosperous country. Yes, there were it was ruled by a president who was a dictator, or a whatever you want to call Batista, but capitalism existed in the country. You were allowed to start businesses. Opposition to the government was dealt with a rigid hand. Yes, it was. People were killed, they were executed. So I'm not going to tell you that it was a perfect system, but it was a wealthy country, and it was a country where the middle class was the majority, and it existed very well. Automobiles would get to Cuba. New cars from GM would get to Cuba at the same time they get to the United States. Casinos, vacation spots. All of America's elite would vacation there. This was a prosperous country with new architecture, new buildings. Okay, all of this happening. And what happened when the revolution came in? Check out Cuba today. It's in ruins. There's no money. It's poverty. The poor is 80% of the population. There is no middle class. And who enrich themselves? The upper crust, the elites, those who make the laws. Make the laws. I'm not talking about elite businessmen, entrepreneurs. Those are not the people who have money in Cuba. The people who have money in Cuba are the people who run the country, the legislators, the people who run the country. That's who has the money. Understand that that's what's happening here. And then I get these people telling me, lecturing that the left in this country, the AOCs of the world, the Bernie Sanders, the Elizabeth Warrens, are not going down that path. The Mayor Pete is not going down that path. You're wrong. You haven't lived it. You take your liberties for granted. You are allowing this cancer of socialism to slowly creep into this country. And guess what? Once it catches, once you catch it, there is no cure. Okay? You are allowing it because you are being naive and you're being allowed yourself to be manipulated under the guise of, I want to help everyone. I want free this and I want free that. Well, let me tell you something. If something is sought of as a value, if something is sought and thought of value and thought important enough to pursue and thought important enough to be offered as a payment, that means it's not free. It has a value. Someone somewhere down the line has paid for it. There is no free. And the only people who believe in free are the people who have never seen what believing in free does. We're talking rationing. I'm not going to tell you that's happening today here. I know that. This isn't overnight. I understand that. You're just opening the door for something that 20 or 30 years down the road, that may not matter to you, but it matters to me because I have grandkids. And I want them to have the same opportunities that my family did 60 years ago when they came to this country. The same opportunities. And by voting the way, by not voting, because everyone's entitled to vote how they want, by not understanding where this free, where this handout mentality takes you, because you haven't lived it, because you haven't seen its effect, you cannot judge. I'm sorry, this is not trying to be elitist or trying to be talked down or be smarter than anyone. No, it's called experience. It's called living through something. And until you do, until you feel it, until you see the losses, until you see businesses taken away, until you see bank accounts seized, until you see your freedoms taken away, until you see people put in jail for their beliefs, until you see people put in jail because they're part of an AOC list, you people have no clue what you're doing until that happens. And we don't want that to happen. That cannot happen. It's incredible to me that when you look at Florida as a microcosm of what is this country, Florida, who Trump was supposed to lose by 3 or 4 points to Biden or more, won by 3 or 4 points. South Florida, which was supposed to be this put Biden over the top in the state, quite the contrary. You know why? Because the people who are most enthusiastic and who most came out to vote in this state are people who have lived what I have been talking about. I have to just, in utter disbelief as I listen and read comments from people are trying to lecture those of us who have lived through things like this about the virtues of socialism. This is an absurdity. This is an obscenity. This is irresponsible. And if AOC, with her sycophant comment, does not make it evident and perfectly clear to you, I don't know what will. I really don't. You're taking your liberties for granted. You're taking this country for granted. The only people in this country who do not achieve are people who do not work to achieve. The only people who do not learn to fish in this country are the people who would rather be given a fish. The only people who do not prosper in this country are people who have no desire to work at prosperity. This is the land of opportunity. Slowly, you will make it the land of no opportunity. The exact same things that you're decrying today about certain sectors are decrying today about lack of opportunity, lack of upward mobility, lack of education. All those things, by voting for the left, you are perpetuating and assuring that that will be achieved. It will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. The only way to prosper, the only way to move ahead is what I have seen for 60 years in this country, having grown up in the Cuban community. You start, and it's very simplistic, but I've seen it over and over again. People come to this country who were professionals in their country, and they come to this country and start cleaning toilets in a company. And 30 years later, they own that company. Or 30 years later, they started a company that is better at what they do than that other company. But that doesn't happen working 9 to 5. That doesn't happen taking handouts or taking subsidies or accepting a fish. That happens by learning to fish. That happens by perfecting how to fish. That happens by learning where the fish are. That happens by working at it day and night. That happens by going out on days where it's stormy. That happens when it's going out in a hurricane. That happens with sacrifice. And that is what's being taken away in this country, that mindset, and disguised, okay? Disguised by saying, no, the reason you don't achieve is because you don't have the same opportunity. Bullshit. And excuse the French. Own up to it. The more we go left, the less this country achieves. Why is this country the envy of the world? Why is this country where everyone wants to come? Why is this country the world's #1 economy? Why? Because of capitalism and a democracy, all being undermined today with your vote for the left. Luckily, this is going to be over soon. If there is fraud, this will be the president who will unclothe it and bring it forth, because he will not stop. He is relentless. So I'm sure the left is shaking in their boots with that, and the right, both sides, because they're both corrupt. But if someone's going to put a magnifying glass on this issue, if it truly exists, this is it. We're at the crossroads. So a lot of good may come out of this. And finally, I will say this. In the unfortunate situation that Donald Trump is not the president, January 2021, I will tell you this. You're going to see how much you miss the character of who this guy is. Never in the history of this country have we had a political figure who has more positively influenced knowing politics, becoming involved, voting, This has been a result of the Donald Trump presidency. And in this country has become far more educated as to politics based on Donald Trump having served as president than any other political leader in the history of this country. You're going to miss him. With all his insanity, with all his uncouth, with all his lack of etiquette and being able to properly communicate, with all his warts and flaws, he is far superior to what could be coming in. Remember these words: you will miss the man. This country will miss the man. And if we go back to our old trade deals and the Iran nuclear deal, if we go back to all those things, we will all suffer tremendously, and it'll take a decade to undo the wrongs of the left. Remember, the left, the Democrats, they are the party that in their history, they have been on the wrong side most of the time of everything. From slavery to segregation to Jim Crow laws to the Ku Klux Klan to criminal reform to school vouchers. This party has been on the wrong side most of the time. Understand that and look it up historically. That's who the Democrats are. The party on the wrong side of most equations. They are on the wrong side again. And this hopefully plays out, and I'm a big believer that God has the plan, a master plan in this. I pray to him and I say, trust God to make this go the right way. We'll come out hopefully better, but we're in a dangerous crossroads in this country. Open your eyes and realize that you're being indoctrinated by a system who takes all collateral damage as acceptable damage to make sure that they get hold of the biggest cash cow in the world, the United States of America. Thank you, and have a good day, and let's hope that this outcome comes quickly.